Okay, so this week's Torah portion is Parshas Vayigash. A lot to learn, a lot of great lessons we can learn from this week's Parsha. The story kicks off with Yehuda making an appeal to Yosef on behalf of his brother Binyamin. So at the end of last week's Parsha, Binyamin was caught red-handed with an expensive silver cup from the Egyptian palace, and basically they're at the mercy of the Egyptians, but really represented by Yosef, who's having all these like interesting interactions, and he wants his brother and he wants his father to come. So he was instructed to go get Yaakov, but Yehuda said that Yosef said that Binyamin is going to have to stay behind. And now this parsha kicks off with Yehuda advocating for his brother Binyamin, and he basically says, "Take me instead. Take me as a servant. Let everybody else go. Keep me if you need a bargaining chip." And he spoke to him in a very powerful way, very passionate, eloquent speech he basically gave. And that's what Yehuda starts doing in the beginning of the Parsha. Okay, so this is how the Parsha starts off. Now, ultimately, we'll get to the continuation of the story shortly, but really what that led to is Yosef identifying himself to his brothers, okay? But before that, for a minute, I just want to share, I learned this morning, I heard a recording of a class on this topic by Rabbi Shmuel Zucker from Yerushalayim. And he learned out from this pasuk in a more, a non-literal way, that this refers to prayer. Just look at these words without the context of the storyline, which of course is the simple understanding of the Torah. Vayigash elav Yehuda. Yehuda approached him, and he said, "Bi Adoni, Yedaber no avdecha davar ba'azdei Adoni, ve'al yichar apcha be'avdecha." "If you please, my Lord, may your servant speak a word in your ear, and do not be angry with your servant." These are the words Yehuda said, but he said, really, we're all Yehuda. Yehuda is the word for the Jewish people. Yehuda, we are Yehudim, we are Jews. And it's a message of tefillah. Vayigash elav Yehuda is a message of a Yid standing before Hashem in prayer, asking for Hashem's mercy, humbling ourselves before Hashem and recognizing that we are, insignificant compared to Hashem, of course. And it's like a message of tefillah that we should have. He said, "Bi Adoni," another way of reading "Bi Adoni," besides "if you please, my Lord," is what like the Art Scroll translates it to in the context of this story. But also you can understand it as saying, "Bi Adoni," you are within me. Bi could also mean you are in me, you are within me. It's like a message of Hashem is within us, and we stand before Hashem in tefillah.
That sounds very similar, not the same, similar to the line before the Shemona Esrei.
Yeah. Hashem sifasai tevtacha fi agidilatacha. Yeah, there's some similarities there. Yeah, absolutely. So he was talking about tefillah. He went on to quote the Mishnah in Sota. The last Mishnah in Sota says, "Be'ikvos Mashiach chutzpah yiskeh," which means on the heels of Mashiach, in the generation prior to the arrival of Mashiach, there will be a big increase in chutzpah. Okay, this is a prediction from the Mishnah. So the simple understanding of chutzpah is like this brazenness of people, and maybe more specifically a younger generation that rises up against the older generation and doesn't respect their values and their traditions, and has a lot of chutzpah. I guess you don't really need to translate chutzpah in how they behave.
Or the 20s.
Okay, so that's the simple understanding of chutzpah.
Wow, yeah. It's the children of the 60s.
But he says that in general, we say that when you have a midah, no trait, no concept is purely good or purely evil. Most things in life have good potential and bad potential. We'll just call them raw potential. And it's a question of what you do with it. So even bad character traits, I've talked about this other times, are not intrinsically bad. They can just be used in a bad way, but they also have a positive use that they could be, that we can tap into. So what is the positive side of chutzpah? That's what he wanted to know. How can we use, let's acknowledge that we're in the generation before Mashiach. Let's acknowledge that there's a lot of chutzpah in our generation. How can we use that power of chutzpah for good? And his answer was to use it in prayer. As we're talking about here with Yehuda, Bi Adoni, use it in prayer. Have chutzpah in tefillah. And the way he explained that is, we can often feel that we're not worthy of standing before Hashem. And we're not worthy of davening to Hashem. And look at what we've done. Look what Averis I may have done today or last night. Look how disconnected I am. Or maybe sometimes I am connected, but sometimes I'm disconnected. And we have these times that it's like, am I really worthy of standing before the Creator of the world in tefillah? That's when you want to take chutzpah. Be a mechutzav. Have chutzpah. Say, despite my wrongdoings, despite how disconnected I often am, I have the brazenness to stand before the Creator of the world and beg Him for my life. Beg Him to help me. Beg Him in tefillah. That's what we should do. That's a positive trait. Chutzpah in tefillah. Now that fits, that's not a contradiction to humility. As these wordings say, yidaber na avdecha, like we want to refer to ourselves as humble and insignificant in the eyes of Hashem, but our humility should not be so much that it's like, okay, I am so worthless that I'm not even worthy of davening to Hashem. That's where we take it too far. Like, okay, I've burnt that bridge. I've lost that ability. That's too much humility or guilt or whatever you want to call that. But rather, we should have the humility. We recognize that nothing happens without Hashem, and no matter where we feel we are in our connection with Hashem, we should always have the chutzpah to daven to Hashem. That was his message. I thought it was a very, very powerful message. I saw so I was researching that Mishnah once I had looked up that idea, and I come across another idea which I figured I'd share. It's a little off topic of the Parsha, but it's very on topic of that Mishnah. Okay? So I found this article here, actually on Torah.org, when I was looking up the pasuk, written by Rabbi Pinchas Winston. So he says, first he talks about the simple understanding of chutzpah and how many generations have had it. It's not really even new to us. But he brings in another discussion. He says the Ramchal and the Gra talk about different levels of love of Hashem. Okay? There's two levels of people who love Hashem. One of them he calls Hasidim, which don't confuse that for the modern day use of the word Hasidim. Okay, the word Hasidim has been around way longer than the movement of Hasidus. But it refers to a refined, good, connected Jew who loves Hashem and loves the Torah and does everything he or she can to do good and avoid bad. But he says, okay, basically you're a really good Jew. But that's really the lower level of connection. The higher level is somebody who seeks what he calls tikkun shekhinah, the rectification of the divine presence, of the Shekhinah. And on this level, living by the Torah is not enough. It's not enough that I am learning and I'm connected and I'm inspired and I'm trying to avoid averis and I'm doing mitzvahs and all these wonderful things. That's not enough. I'm never going to be happy with that for as long as the Shekhinah is in exile, for as long as the presence of Hashem is so trampled on throughout the world. Meaning to say, this is not about me. This is not all about me. My Judaism is not all about engaging my own soul, my own neshama in a beautiful process of tikkun of the neshama and improving my character traits and doing good and doing mitzvahs and avoiding bad. That's just the basic level. It should matter to me. It should matter to me what Hashem's presence is like in the world. And as he says, consider the following hard facts. There is no temple in which the Shekhinah can reside, and it has been replaced by a mosque, and that is surrounded by churches. Assimilation is higher than 80%, and intermarriage occurs quite frequently. Even within the Torah community, there are serious poverty issues, health complications, among other issues of many types. The situation is very far from perfect. All of it results in a terrible chilul Hashem. People don't know why God is justified in allowing all this to happen to his people. So they just assume he isn't there or doesn't care, which is a terrible chilul Hashem. Okay? Fair point? The Shekhinah is not in the best place, so to speak. Many people don't see Hashem in this world. So the higher level of tikkun Shekhinah is somebody who's not just pursuing his own Judaism, but cares enough to spread this around the world. He cares about other people's spirituality, other people's neshama. It matters to him that the name of Hashem should be sanctified throughout the world, that people should be introduced to the presence of Hashem, to a relationship with Hashem, to all that Hashem does for us, to all the good that we have.
I didn't think we did that with non-Jewish people.
Okay, fair discussion point, but even if we're focusing on Jewish people,
Right,
that's a very important mission. It's a very important mission. It's about not only thinking about our own spirituality, but thinking about Hashem. It's not just, do I see Hashem in my life? It's, do the people around me see Hashem in this world? Does the world see Hashem? So the highest level of connection to Hashem is that Hashem matters to you, and you will do everything you can to spread awareness of his name in the world. And this is what he refers to as chutzpah. And this is, I read this as a very sharp rebuke, really. It's a very sharp rebuke. The rebuke is that one who is focused on his own Judaism, and he says, okay, I'm good. I don't know, what's this chutzpah that the Mishnah is talking about? I don't have chutzpah. I'm connected, I'm davening, I'm learning, I'm doing mitzvahs, I'm connecting to Hashem, I'm doing all these wonderful things. Well, the truth is, he's the one who has the chutzpah. Because he only is concerned about his own neshama, his own spirituality, but he doesn't care about Hashem. That's a form of chutzpah, that it's only you and your connection, and it's not about the bigger picture of the presence of Hashem in this world. So that's what he says it means. Chutzpah will be increased, means there'll be more and more people who are focused on their own spirituality, but not on helping increase godliness in this world as a whole. I thought that was a very, very sharp thing to say, but very accurate, very accurate. We need to do more to care about Hashem and the presence of Hashem and other people's spiritual connection as well.
Right.
Super important.
Indeed.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the beginning of the parsha. And now Yosef is going to reveal himself to, I'm skipping some of the nuances of the story, definitely worth reading the whole parsha, but at that point Yosef basically could not restrain himself anymore in the presence of his siblings, and he said, and he's ready to reveal himself to his brothers. It's a big moment. It's been a really, really long time, decades since that terrible story. And the question is, what does Yosef feel towards his brothers? These are people who put him in a terrible situation. Don't get lost in the fact that Yosef is the second in command in Egypt right now. That is where he's currently at. But I would say you wouldn't blame him if he had a grudge against his brothers for 15 years of pain that he had to deal with. 15 years of pain. He got sold. He almost was killed. He was thrown into a pit, and then he was sold, and then he was a slave. And then he got framed by his master's wife, and then he went to jail for 12 years. So not a simple life. This was all kicked into, all these events were kicked into motion by the brothers who, doing this to him. But Yosef does not behave that way. Yosef behaves with a lot of brotherly love towards them. And even just this point where it says, what did
Wait,
Yosef...
he's been testing them to see whether they're that way. It doesn't, at least
Yeah.
the storyline up to this now is testing, not so much brotherly love.
Right, but it's about to be. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Now it's been, testing that I think you can say is a pretty intense test. Like it's really, giving them, they're really going through something. Okay, with the whole story, with the brother and Binyamin and all that. Yeah, for sure. But now he says, remove everyone from before me. Yosef did not want any Egyptians in the room when he reveals himself to his brothers. Why is that? He has guards, he has whatever. Like, what is it? What's the deal with that? You know why he did that? Because he realized that when his brothers realized who Yosef was, they would be ashamed. That's a very powerful moment that's about to be, unveiled over here. He's about to be, and they're going to remember instantly that this is the younger brother who they sold as a slave and almost killed. It's going to be a very embarrassing moment for them. And out of consideration for their feelings, he didn't want them to have to be embarrassed in front of more people. That's why he said, clear the room. That is crazy. It's like, what a level of consideration to people who ruined your life. It's really incredible lesson of midos that we learn from Yosef. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. So he reveals himself. He reveals himself to them. And the next main idea is that they send for Yaakov. Okay, Yaakov is told the news that Yosef is still alive and is in Egypt, and now Yaakov is going to make that journey to Mitzrayim, to Egypt, and be reunited with Yaakov. So he's about to go out there, and Hashem gives him this prophecy. It says Hashem spoke to Yaakov in the night. He said, Yaakov, he said, here I am. Vayomer Anochi Hakel Elokei Avicha Al Tira Merda Mitzrayim. I am Hashem, the God of your father. Have no fear of descending to Egypt, for I shall establish you as a great nation there. Okay? So I saw this idea. It's just like a small question. Hashem is trying to calm down Yaakov's fears. Who said Yaakov was afraid? Why was Yaakov afraid? The Egyptians, and led by Yosef, are about to receive them with open arms. You know why they went down to Mitzrayim? Because they're starving, because there's a hunger. They have nothing to eat, and all the food is in Mitzrayim. And they go there, and now Yosef's been reunited with his brothers, and he's calling for his father. And certainly, Yosef has no bad intentions to his father. He's going to give him food. And he's the second in command of the whole country. So what does Yaakov have to be scared of? That's basically the question I saw. And the answer, Rashi says, is that Yaakov was distressed that he needed to leave Eretz Yisrael. As simple as that. The fact that he had to go to Chutz La'aretz, leave the land of Israel, was something he was very not convinced of. He wasn't excited to do that. And Hashem reassured him that he's going to accompany him every step of the way. I shall descend with you. And actually, more than that, he says, I will make you into a great nation there. Meaning to say, it's not just, okay, you got to leave Israel, I'll watch over you till you get back. It's leave Israel, I'm bringing you to this foreign land because it's there that the nation will be born. That is where the birth of the Jewish people actually happened. And then part of his promise was that he's going to bring him out. The next verse says, I shall descend with you to Egypt, and I shall also surely bring you up.
I never thought about the fact that is where the Jewish people really...
Yeah, isn't that crazy? In exile.
Together,
yeah. So Yaakov went down to Egypt with 70 people. That's what it says. 70 people. That's not a nation. That's just, family reunion. That's not a nation. But in Egypt is where that happened. I saw from the Kedushas Levi that he writes on these words, V'anochi elcha gam Allah, Anochi a'alcha gam Allah. I will surely bring you up. So the way he understood this is like another way of reading this word is not just I will bring you up, but he understood it as I will go up with you when you go up. Anochi elcha gam ola. I will go up when you go up. Okay, interesting message. What's the message there? Yosef Levi says that the more a person grows in his Judaism, the more he begins to realize the greatness of Hashem more and more. Basically, Judaism grows with you. Hashem, what Hashem is, grows with you. As we grow and we engage and we learn and we practice and we get more and more inspired and invested in our Judaism, our eyes open more and we see more. I think that a classic example of this is in the world of Emunah. Emunah means one way of explaining Emunah, to see Hashem in your life, to realize that everything that's happening to you is being orchestrated by Hashem. So there's a spectrum here. One might, let's say one starts off without any Emunah, meaning to say, maybe he doesn't even believe in God or doesn't believe that God is involved in worldly matters, and then slowly he comes to realize that Hashem is very much alive and well, so to speak, and here and present in our lives. So now let's say I'm on this journey, and now all of a sudden I notice that Hashem exists, Hashem is really here. And then something miraculous happens in my life, and I'm like, wow, you see, Hashem is here. Like, that was Hashem. But I don't see every nuance and every detail and everything that happens to me as being guided by Hashem. Once in a while, something stands out, and that causes me to have this reaction of like, wow, that was Hashem. But really, that's not the right reaction. That was Hashem. You know why? Because everything is Hashem. It's just that things jump out at us, and then we grow. Our emunah grows, and we start to see Hashem more and more, until eventually we're at a point when we realize that every single thing that happens to us is from Hashem. The Talmud says as an example of Yisurim. Yisurim are like hardships that Hashem gives us for our good. You know what one of the rabbis say? What is an example of hardships? A person puts his hand into his pocket to take out a coin, and he takes out the wrong coin. I don't know, let's say he takes out a quarter instead of a nickel that he meant to take out of his pocket, right? Which is the most minor inconvenience in the world. It's like, oh, oops, I'm sure you've had that, or maybe you pull out, maybe more modern days, like your credit cards, Here, like that. Got all these credit cards, like, oh, I took out the wrong one, or the wrong key. So it seems very, very minor, but there's a level of emunah when we realize that nothing happens without it being orchestrated by Hashem, no matter how small or insignificant it seems. So just as it is with emunah, that the more you see Hashem, the more you see Hashem. The more you see Him in specific instances in your life, the more you will start to see Him more and more in your life. So too, in general in Judaism, the more you grow, the more it opens up before you, and the more you see more greatness of Hashem. That's what it means. Anochi elcha gam Allah, I will go up with you. And that's kind of the idea that, like, in Yiddishkeit, we're never done. There's always more. There's always more to learn. There's always more to connect to. There's always a holier level we can get ourselves up to. There's never like a box that we can check that we've done it. We're always growing. And the more we grow, the more we see. I think another great example of that for sure is Torah study. Torah study is totally like that. The more you learn, the more you come to know, and also the more you realize how little you know, and how big Torah is, and how deep it is, and how much more there is there. It's never like what meets the eye, It's never what it seems like. The Talmud in Tainus also says that there's a difference between the physical world and the spiritual world. In the physical world, the emptier something is, the more potential it has to hold and store an item. So you take a cup like this, here it's 8-ounce cup, and it's empty, which means it has the potential for 8 ounces of liquid to be put into this. In the spiritual world, the Talmud says, the more a person is full, the more he could hold. And that's this idea. The more I get, the more my mind expands to like an ability to take in more, to understand more, to see higher. That's the reality of the spiritual world. Okay, and with that, Yaakov goes on to meet Yosef, And that finally happens. Let's see where that is. Yaakov arrives in Egypt. Here. Chapter 46, verse 29. Vayeser Yosef merkavto. I'll read the English. Joseph harnessed his chariot and went to meet Yaakov. Okay, so Yosef went out to meet his father who was arriving. He appeared before him, fell on his neck, and he wept on his neck excessively. Then Yaakov said to Yosef, now I can die after my having seen your face because you are still alive. Okay, etc. That's a very emotional reunion after 22 years of separation. So I heard this like parable from Rabbi Biederman, also like to quote. He's the king of parables. So he says, let's say you have a family with little kids, and a little kid sneaks out of his parents' house and goes to play with a friend, down the block for a few hours. And the parents don't know where he went, and they're kind of concerned about him. But thankfully, after a little bit of time, maybe it's not even a few hours, maybe it's only a few minutes, where the parents didn't have eyes on the kid comes back. What is the first thing the parent's going to ask the kid? Where were you? Right? Where have you been? That's what a normal person asks somebody that's been missing. They have no idea how they went missing. So Yaakov hasn't seen Yosef for 22 years, and he has no idea what happened to him. He was told by his kids that he was killed. Right? So something obviously doesn't add up. He's alive, but he was told that he was killed. So 22 years, he doesn't ask him a single thing about where were you and what happened to you. And according to the Rambam, this was new to me, Yaakov never found out that the brothers actually sold him. I don't know what story he knew, or he didn't know any story, but he did not. According to some, he didn't know. But nothing, not a single word. And the message he was saying is Yaakov, in his greatness, realized that what happened was not important. That's not really important. If you think about it, what's important is that you have your son back.
Right.
That's really what's the story that happened? That's not the point. I don't know. I picture, a somber comparison is those who were kidnapped, taken hostage in Gaza and got released. Like when they reunited with their family, the first question wasn't tell me your story. No, the first question is, I'm so happy you're back. That's all. That's the focus. So the point was that it doesn't matter what happened in the past. It doesn't matter what the story was. The point is that Yaakov's beloved son has been returned, and now he just wants to spend time with him. That's all that matters to him, is you're back, you're home, I get to spend some time with you. And Rabbi Biederman says Yaakov's action reflects the midah of Hashem. What an incredible idea. He says Hashem has so many children that he is missing dearly, that he hasn't seen, so to speak, for decades. Disconnected children of Hashem who are not connecting to spirituality and to Judaism. They're lost, so to speak, from their Father in heaven. And every day Hashem is just awaiting, when are my children going to come home? When are they going to come back into Shuvah? When are they going to come back and be close? And he stands with open arms, waiting to embrace his children who have gone astray. And that's the midah of Hashem. When a child goes back, somebody comes back into Shuvah, somebody's ready to return to the ways of the Jewish people, Hashem doesn't launch an interrogation. Where were you? What happened? Why did you do that? Why were you living that kind of lifestyle? Where have you been? How did you go astray? That's not the point. That's not the point. That's not important. That's a detail about the story that's not important as well. All Hashem said, he doesn't say a word about the past. Focus is, my child's back. I get to spend time with my child. That's all that matters. That's all that makes him happy. That's all Hashem wants.